Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we are going to be wrapping up our NFL season previews with our playoff and award predictions. We have already broken down every division if you haven't seen those. But Logan, now we have arrived at the good stuff. So first of all, why don't you break down your playoff field in the NFC for me and then give me your first round predictions there.
Yes, sir. So my number one seed is going to be the Dallas Cowboys at 12-5. I have the San Francisco 49ers with the exact same record in my 2 seed. The Cowboys, in my hypothetical, win the head-to-head matchup, so they get the number 1 seed. The Packers are my 3 seed at 11-6. Holding down the NFC South, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 9-8. My 5 spot is the Philadelphia Eagles with the same record as the Cowboys at 12-5. Again, the Cowboys win the head-to-head and divisional matchup, so they get the 1 seed. The Lions come in at my 6 seed at 10-7, and the Seahawks sneak into the playoffs at 10-7 in my 7 spot. And you want me to go ahead and run down the first round?
Let me give you my NFC standings first, actually. So
yeah.
I have the Eagles as my 1 seed going 14-3. I have the Niners going 13-4, and I will say I made some slight changes to my final records. I was 6 games under 500 for the league, so the Niners were given an extra win compared to what I said when we previewed the NFC West. I have the Lions as my 3 seed at 10-7. The Falcons winning 8 games and the NFC South. Then I have the Cowboys in my first wildcard spot at 11-6. The Seahawks at 10-7 and the Giants at 9-8.
Okay, so my first round, the Cowboys obviously get a bye. The Seattle Seahawks will travel to the San Francisco 49ers, my 7-2 matchup. I have San Francisco winning that one. I just think San Francisco is one of the elite teams in the NFC. I think they're primed to, with health, literally without just a third-string quarterback. If it's Darnold, if it's Purdy, I think San Francisco could make another deep playoff run. My big upset of the first round, I have the Detroit Lions finally getting a monkey off their back, man, and winning a playoff game. That's probably my biggest upset. I have them upsetting the divisional rival Green Bay Packers. I think setting a new era in the NFC North where Detroit is going to be uber competitive post Aaron Rodgers. So that's my big upset. And then, of course, I have the Philadelphia Eagles steamrolling the NFC South Tampa Bay Buccaneers led out by Baker Mayfield. So I have San Francisco, Detroit, and Philly advancing out of the first round.
Okay, so the Eagles have the bye for me. I have the Niners beating the Giants. I think there's a pretty clear, massive talent gap there. Better skill position talent for San Francisco. I think the quarterback play is comparable, but everything around Purdy is so much more optimized. We know how loaded the Niners are defensively, and now they add Javon Hargrave to that unit from last year, which was a historically dominant one. That feels like a pretty easy pick. I actually have the Lions losing in the first round despite their being my 3 seed and winning the NFC North. I do like them more than the Packers because I think there's a pretty significant gap in offensive dynamism. But versus the Seahawks, I trust Geno more than Goff to consistently make good decisions in a big spot. I think he's a more dynamic creator as well. And although the Seahawks defense was quite bad last year with some of their major additions, Bobby Wagner, Witherspoon, I think they reach a higher ceiling defensively than the Lions, even though I think that's a very young unit that is progressing in the right direction. So those are the couple key factors there. I think those teams are very close, though. And then I have the Cowboys trouncing the Falcons. Again, I just think they're far more talented. Okay, let's flip to the AFC. What's your field there?
Okay, in the AFC, I have the Kingslayer, the Kansas City Chiefs, atop my AFC at 13-4. My 2 seed is the Jacksonville Jaguars at 12-5. The Bills and Bengals have the exact same record, holding down the other 2 divisions. The Jaguars just had the best in-division record. Excuse me. My 5 seed, I have the New York Jets at 11-6. My 6 seed, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers at 11-6. The 7 seed, I have the Los Angeles Chargers at 10-7. And so probably my hottest take coming out of the AFC is I have the Baltimore Ravens missing the playoffs at 10-7.
Wow.
Nothing against Baltimore. I know you have Baltimore dominating the AFC, Carson. It's nothing to really do with talent. It has more to do with Lamar's shown us a track record of missing games, and I think that if Lamar misses anywhere between 2-4 games, I think that could be enough to give other teams in the AFC the edge. So that's the only reason Baltimore gets edged out. I think that the AFC is uber competitive. I think the Browns and Dolphins are also tough emissions from the playoff field. But again, somebody's got to lose these football games. So I think my hottest take out of the AFC is I have the Ravens just missing the playoffs to the Chargers.
Obviously, health is going to be a deciding factor for the Ravens, and it's not just Lamar, who I think his injury proneness can be a bit overstated, but he has missed a handful of games in each of the last 2 years. It's the entire roster. It is as star-studded as any roster in football and as injury-prone as any roster in football, which is a concerning combination. But I do believe deeply in what they are doing. I think they have proven to be year in, year out, one of the league's most elite defenses. I think they could be the best in the league there this year. And offensively, when Lamar plays, they are also among the league's elite. And now they've put the best combination of weapons around him. I have the Ravens as my 1 seed, winning 13 games because of all of those factors. Then I have the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Jags all right behind them, winning 12 games. I'm most confident in the Chiefs, so I have them as my 2 seed. The Bills and the Jags, I both gave an extra win compared to when we previewed their divisions. The Bills, because I think I was feeling a bit down on them at the time because of some of the just drama of the Dig situation. It feels like that has resolved itself a bit more, and I'm going to bet on a supremely talented roster, a healthier defense, even if it is an older one. So maybe there's a bit of regression, but more talent will be out there than last year, even with the loss of Tremaine Edmonds because of how hurt they were with Trey White and Micah Hyde and Von Miller last year. And then the Jaguars, I think they're really good, but I only have them winning 12 games because of the weakness of their division. Then I have the Bengals and the Jets both winning 11 games as my 5 and 6 seeds. And I have the Browns winning 10 games, just edging out the Chargers for that last wild card spot, who I also have winning 10 games. Both of these are clearly playoff caliber teams to me that might be the 3rd or 4th best team in the NFC if you drop them into that conference. The reason I'm betting on the Browns over the Chargers, despite a tougher division, I think their defensive ceiling is significantly higher. To me, they're more talented on that side of the ball. And I think offensively, they have this elite foundation with consistently a top 3 dominant run game. And I do believe that Deshaun is not going to be as rusty, as sloppy as he was in the home stretch of last season. So his progression, defensive progression, and that elite run game foundation, I just think they're a more complete, talented, all-around football team, but it is very close. So, okay, what are your first-round predictions for the AFC?
So the Chiefs lock up a bye by getting the number 1 seed in a rematch from the season previous. We get the Chargers traveling to the number 2 seed Jacksonville Jaguars. I think this is going to be a good game if we get it hypothetical. Obviously, Herbert trying to get revenge for blowing that massive lead. I'm going to go with T-Law, though. I think this is his breakout season, and I like Jacksonville just a little more. I like their defensive personnel a little more. I think their pass rush could be a little better. And like I said, man, I think T-Law is going to climb into that upper echelon of elite quarterbacks this season. I think this is his breakout year. So I'm going to go with Jacksonville to advance. My next game, I have the 6-seeded Steelers traveling to the 3-seeded Buffalo Bills. At this point, I love my Pittsburgh Steelers. I love what we're doing. I think we're building a solid foundation for the future, but I'm not going to pick against Josh Allen in the playoffs. Allen's a machine. I just think the Bills are unequivocally the better football team. They've got a more explosive offense. I think they've got better weapons. I think they've got a marginally better offensive line, and I think the defenses are comparable. Look, the Steelers have playmakers anytime T.J. Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick are healthy. You know, they can swing games, but the Bills also have a loaded defense too. So I'm going to take Buffalo to advance. And then in my final game, this one was tough. I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets to upset my AFC North champions, Cincinnati Bengals. I think that's going to be a cold one. I think the Jets are out with something to prove this year, Carson, and I think they're going to turn a lot of heads. I think this could be a top 3 defense in all of football. I believe in the Jets that much. And if Aaron Rodgers can steer the ship, if he can make some big-time crucial plays, I think they can win some football games. So my upset in the AFC for the first round, the Jets take down the divisional champ Bengals.
I like it. I definitely think that the Jets have the potential to win a playoff game. I think that their talent on paper might slightly surpass that of the Bengals. I think that defense is going to be elite, and I have more confidence in them on that side of the ball. And Aaron Rodgers, I believe, is capable in any single game of rising to that elite level. So if he could outplay Joe Burrow or maybe even play at the level of Joe Burrow, I definitely think the Jets would be at least on even ground in that game. I like how you had to justify the Bills over the Steelers as if it wasn't a 38-3 massacre when they played last year that I was there for, and I loved every second of it. Of course, I think the Steelers are going to be a lot better this year. I think Kenny's going to be a different player, but the Bills are still pretty clearly more talented to me and have a massive edge at quarterback. So the Ravens have the bye for me. I have the Chiefs beating the Browns. To me, just picking against the Chiefs in a wild card round game would be foolish. They've walked to 5 straight AFC championship games. They have the most consistently elite offense in football history, arguably at this point, over a half-decade span. And to me, the highest level of quarterback play that we have ever seen. I do have the Bills beating the Jets, and I could see the Jets winning this game. But I think the level of consistent elite offense that we have seen from the Bills over these last 3 years is only surpassed by the Chiefs. 3 straight top 3 scoring offenses. Excellent situationally. I think that they have dynamic, to me, top 2 quarterback play on the planet. They have probably their best running situation overall with the development of James Cook. I think that this is their best group of weapons with the addition of Dalton Kincaid. And again, they retain a majority of the talent on what has been a top 2 scoring defense for 2 of the last 3 years. So give me the Bills to beat the Jets. And then I have the Bengals beating the Jags. Even though the Jags are the higher seed here, I still think the Bengals are the more complete roster. I think that Burrow is less mistake prone than T-Law. I think that they have the better collection of offensive talent, even though Jacksonville has made some big additions there. And since he's just really proven themselves these last couple years as a dangerous, elite playoff team. So I'm going to bet on them and a top 3 quarterback in football with a really strong defensive foundation and a brilliant defensive coordinator. I do think they're better coached as well. Okay, back to the NFC for the divisional round. What are your predictions?
So the NFL always reseeds. Low seed's going to take on high seeds. So my low seed is the Detroit Lions at 6. And probably my upset of the playoffs, I have them beating my 1-seeded Dallas Cowboys. There's a proven track record in football, Carson, and that's that you should not bet on the Dallas Cowboys to do anything when it comes to the playoffs. I've regurgitated this stat many times throughout our previews so far. Carson, Dak Prescott and Tony Romo hold the record for the most losses in a divisional round without an NFC title game appearance. The Dallas Cowboys have not been back to the NFC title game since their heydays of the 1990s. So I'm going to bet on that track record continuing. I'm going to say Dak sets the record for most divisional round appearances without an NFC title game appearance, and the Detroit Lions advance to the NFC title game for the first time since 1991 when they were led out by Scott Mitchell and Barry Sanders. So that's probably my upset of the playoffs. So why do I think this could happen? Like I mentioned with Dallas's track record, it's just always bet against the Cowboys when it's playoff time. I will not pick them to do anything. And then Detroit, I think Detroit has a high-octane enough offense to where they can kind of go toe-to-toe with any team in the playoffs. Granted, I think a great defense could stifle them. I like Detroit's offense. I think they can go toe-to-toe with anybody, and then I think they are going to make tangible improvements this year defensively. They draft Jack Campbell. They bring in some other pieces, I think. And Detroit's defense got better as the season went along, so I think they are primed for massive improvement there this year. My other one, we're going to get a rematch of the NFC title game last year. The 5-seeded Eagles defeat the 2-seeded San Francisco 49ers. Both of these teams, great talent all around. San Francisco's skill positions, talent throughout their defense. I just think Philadelphia is still one of the most talented teams in all of football. Again, I'm concerned about their inside linebackers. I'm concerned about their safety play. When you've got this much talent on the field, I think the big distinction comes down to the quarterback. I mean, Jalen Hurts is a top 5 to top 6 quarterback in football for me. That's going to ultimately give Philly the edge to beat San Francisco in back-to-back years. So my NFC title game is going to be the 6-seeded Lions traveling to the 5th-seeded Eagles.
I love it. 2 wild card teams in the Camdenverse. I'm not sure how likely it is that the Eagles are a wild card team, but we got to respect your canon there. I have the Eagles pretty comfortably beating the Seahawks. As much as I like Seattle and believe in Geno and think that they've clearly improved the defense this offseason, it's tough to find a single position group that Seattle is better at than Philly. Like, probably the secondary, but Philly's secondary is still pretty damn good with one of the elite corner tandems in football. And then everywhere else, man, in the trenches, their skill position talent is absurd. They have a top 5 quarterback. It's just tough to overstate how absurdly loaded this Philly team is. So I don't see a flaw that can be exposed there. I think the talent gap is too large. And then it's very interesting to me that you are higher on the Cowboys in the regular season, but predict them to crumble. I actually have the Cowboys beating the Niners. And part of this is I just don't want to go straight chalk. Like, I don't want to have an exact rematch of last year's conference championship and my top 2 seeds playing. But I legitimately can see the ceiling here. And, of course, we saw the Niners and Cowboys meet this past year. It was a competitive game. Dak didn't play very well. But I think although San Francisco has the more talented overall defense, pass rush to pass rush, these two units are comparable. And Dallas's was better last year and might still be better. The addition of Hargrave is going to take San Francisco up a level. But it is a crazy front that Dallas has. And so I think that ability to pressure Brock Purdy, to take him out of his comfort zone, to potentially force him to make some more big-time plays, some legitimate creation, I just don't think that's where he excels. I think that Dak is clearly the better quarterback here with all of his criticism. And I understand that last year he was too mistake prone. I've thrown out these stats over and over again, but just because I think it is worth acknowledging how good Dak was for the previous 3 seasons. His pace was over 5,100 yards, 35 touchdowns to 11.5 picks. So betting on him to be consistently great over an entire playoff run scares me a bit. Betting on Mike McCarthy to consistently have great game management and execution scares me a little bit. But I do think the ingredients are here. If you have an elite pass rush, an elite quarterback play, and potentially can have an advantage in both of those categories, that's a pretty good formula for an upset. And I can very reasonably see Dallas doing that this year. So I also think San Francisco's a little bit thinner on the defensive end this year. And if they suffer a couple injuries, I could see that unit not being at its absolute peak in the playoffs. Not predicting that. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I'd take the Cowboys no matter what. Okay, AFC, what you got?
So I have the 5th seeded New York Jets traveling to my 1 seed, the Kansas City Chiefs. And I want to be clear about something. Let me be clear. I would never pick against Patrick Mahomes ever again. I bet against him in the Super Bowl again this last year against Philadelphia. I've just seen it too many times. I to state the obvious here, like I'm putting Mahomes, Carson, in a Brady territory of I will not bet against him. In a one-game scenario, like if you want me to bet with the just logical part of my brain, I would say the Chiefs don't lose a football game and they win the Super Bowl, right? Basically, like until Patrick Mahomes retires, I would probably take the Chiefs out of the AFC. I don't care what other rosters are constructed. I've just seen it too many times in too many scenarios where he's down 20 points, he's down 30 points, the odds are stacked against him. There's 13 seconds on the clock, and you think you've got a game wrapped up. I would never pick against Patrick Mahomes with the logical part of my brain, ever, in any game, any scenario moving forward. That being said, I don't want to just be boring and take the Chiefs preseason, so I'll mix it up a little bit. And I'll take Aaron Rodgers to upset the Chiefs here in this one. Like I said, great defense. If they can somehow get pressure on Mahomes, that has been the key recipe for beating him. If you can just bring a torrential pass rush on Pat and force him to be under duress, under pressure the majority of the game, you have a shot. So it's not likely. And again, if I'm just picking this straight up logically, I would never bet against Patrick Mahomes, but I'll take the Jets to be kind of original. So the Jets go to the title game. And then we're going to get a battle for New York, Carson. I have Buffalo traveling to Jacksonville in my 3-2 matchup. Josh Allen has balled out in the playoffs every single year, man. He has yet to really let us down. I think Buffalo is, again, a stacked team this year. So I've got them taking out a younger team in Jacksonville that I think's got a little more improvement to make before they're going to be a legitimate AFC contender year in, year out. So we're going to get the battle for NY in my AFC title game. New York traveling to Buffalo.
All right. Very bold stuff. I have the Ravens beating the Bengals, which would be a really fun divisional rival game. And I think a lot of people will say, well, there's a gap in playoff performance between Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. And maybe Burrow's significant advantage as a pure pocket passer and decision maker, his elite accuracy there in a playoff setting, one game do or die, that's the guy you want, which I don't disagree with. I do think that Burrow is a better playoff quarterback than Lamar Jackson. However, I think the totality of the Ravens roster is just superior. This was an elite defense last year. Top 3 scoring unit, top 5 on third downs and in the red zone. Excellent situationally, dominant against the run, loaded secondary, loaded linebacker core, and they had the 5th most sacks in football last year. I just think it is a complete dominant defense. And then I really think that they are going to have a ton of success running the football in a matchup like this. It's the best run game in football, period, point blank, when Lamar is healthy. And his struggles in the playoffs previously have been as a passer, where he hasn't been overly successful and he's made too many mistakes. And I understand that. It is a limited sample size, though. I think this is the best version of pocket passing Lamar that we have seen. And we haven't seen him in the playoffs since he took a leap, in my opinion, and was able to carry a heavier load as a passer. Now I think if he's healthy, we do see him there with the best weapons of his career. He will be improved. I think the Bengals are like the ultimate example of the team that has overachieved their regular season performance in the playoffs these last couple years. I mean, going to the Super Bowl when they were a 10-win team and whatnot. And the Ravens in Lamar's tenure have probably underachieved their regular season expectations the most in the playoffs. But I think that that script flips this year with the best version of Lamar. I mean, his MVP season was incredible. I think the best equipped for a playoff scenario, Lamar, and a defense that I have more faith in to be truly elite than Cincinnati's. And then Chiefs-Bills, man. It's so tough. And I do think that these teams have been the best in the AFC the last few years. I understand that Cincy has been to back-to-back conference title games, and that is the ultimate goal. But I think the Bills clearly have the talent to go out there and beat Kansas City. And they've done it the last 2 times in the regular season, but the last 2 times in the playoffs, it's been the Chiefs that have gotten the better of them. I think the Bills' defense is more talented. I think that this is the weakest group of Chiefs weapons that we've seen. Last year, they obviously had that title at that point, losing Tyreek, now losing Juju. I think it's even another slight step back, at least. And I think that this is probably the best group of Bills weapons. I just can't bet against Patrick Mahomes, man. It's like you said, he is in such complete control on top of being able to make every jaw-dropping play in the book, and really should have been to 4 straight Super Bowls at this point. They've been to 3 of the last 4. That Cincy game was really, really strange, and they were in control for most of it. So I understand what you're saying about how you just want to not go chalk, and I totally respect that. And if I were to pick anybody in the AFC to beat Kansas City, it would still be the Bills, because even though I think the Ravens may have the more talented overall roster, I do value that truly elite passing attack. I think that that level of quarterback play from the pocket as a thrower is massively important in playoff situations when you are trying to take down the most dominant offensive force that we have seen in a shootout. But I can't do it. I can't do it. So I have the Chiefs beating the Bills, setting up a Chiefs-Ravens AFC title game. So back to the NFC. What you got?
So I've got the 6th-seeded Detroit Lions traveling to the 5th-seeded Philadelphia Eagles. We got the two wild card teams matched up here. This is going to be a big game for Detroit if it happens. Like I mentioned, they have not been to an NFC title game since 1991. if this happens, I mean, I think Philly kind of rolls them. I think Philly's just in a different class in terms of talent, in terms of ability. And yeah, I think Philly gets back here, man. We talked about this last episode, Carson. I mentioned this, that, only 8 teams have been back to the Super Bowl after going and losing, right? And even only 3 of those teams have been back and won a Super Bowl. So it's extremely hard to do, but like I said, man, while I don't have this team winning their division, I still think this is a great team. I think they replenished really well. And again, if their inside linebackers and safeties can hold up, this team is still loaded in every other position group, in the trenches, on the line, on offense and defense, skill position talent, QB play. The Eagles are loaded. I think they are as well equipped to repeat as any other team. So it's always really tough, but I have the Eagles bouncing back and going back to the Super Bowl a year after losing.
I do as well. I just think they are the most talented team in the conference, period, point blank. The separator between them and the Niners, who have an elite all-around roster, to me is the faith in quarterback play. Knowing that Jalen Hurts is a top 5 guy, that he can reach the level that he did in the Super Bowl, that he can be a nearly unparalleled dual threat in the sport today. So efficient and dynamic as a passer, and then just this dominant short yardage rushing threat who also has this incredible scrambling ability. The dude is just elite, and he has everything around him elite as well on that roster. So the Cowboys, again, I just don't have faith in it for a 3-4 game stretch. The talent is there, but it's not quite at the level of the Eagles, and I trust their coaching. I trust their quarterback play that much more. AFC, who you got going to the Super Bowl?
The battle for New York. The Jets travel to the Buffalo Bills. I know that people always bring this up with Rodgers. He has not won a title game since 2010, and in his lifetime, he has 1-4 in title games. What I will say to that is the Packers have not had an elite, great defense since 2010. I mean, that's normally a fundamental box that you need to check when you're going to go win a Super Bowl. You need a great defense. The Packers were great that year, and they got to the Super Bowl. Since then, he has not had a great defense. Rodgers has that here. And I want to be clear about something else, too. If the Jets are going to make it to a Super Bowl, if they're going to slay one of the big dragons in the AFC, the Buffalo Bills of the world, the Kansas City Chiefs of the world, or the Bengals of the world, right? Aaron Rodgers is going to have to play great, which he has. People always attribute, Carson, these losses to Aaron Rodgers just because that's what we do as a community, as a fan base. We attribute these wins and losses to QB play. I mean, Rodgers, in my opinion, has played damn near perfect football in title games. Like, I don't solely attribute the losses to Rodgers. I think he's going to have to play great. I also don't think he's had great teams behind him. So if Rodgers plays great against the Bills, against the Bengals, against the Chiefs, whatever matchup we get, I trust this defense to hold their own. Again, most games for the Jets this year, it's going to take Rodgers in this offense producing 3 TDs, which I don't think is going to be an issue. So, yes, Rodgers is going to have to play great. Yes, this defense is going to have to play great behind him, but I think that is one of the most overblown stats in the NFL, is attributing all of Rodgers' lack of his playoff success just to him. I think it has a lot more to do with the team behind him. I think he's got a great unit behind him. I think he can turn back the clock for one more playoff run. So I do think it would be an upset if we got New York and Buffalo. I'm going to take the Jets and Rodgers to get to the Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles. So I've got New York representing the AFC for me.
Wow. Bro is drinking the Hard Knocks Kool-Aid, and I respect it. I really like the Jets. I agree and I disagree with you on the Rodgers point. Where I agree completely is that people, at least some, have gone out and tagged Aaron Rodgers as some sort of loser because he only has the 1 Super Bowl appearance. I think Aaron Rodgers is one of the 5 best quarterbacks to ever play the game. I think he is maybe the purest talent, probably in a tier only with Patrick Mahomes. To me, his ability to create outside the pocket, to make every jaw-dropping throw from different arm angles, just sensational arm strength, and then also barely ever make mistakes, barely ever turn the ball over. And overwhelmingly, that has translated to the playoffs. I mean, he has some of the greatest playoff stats ever, 45 touchdowns to 13 picks. His efficiency basically stays the same. I will say specifically in championship games, he has had two pretty rough performances. 2011, which they won, he was not good. 2 picks to no touchdowns, wasn't efficient as a passer. And then 2015 against Seattle, a great defense, but he struggled in that game as well. Overall, I do think it is a very overplayed narrative, and I don't agree that broadly he's struggled in the playoffs at all. The championship game thing, there is a reason for that reputation. There's a couple instances, but that's such a small sample size, dude. I wouldn't bet on anything based off of 2 games out of a multiple 100-game career from an all-time great player.
I mean, in some of those games, too, the defense is allowing, 4 TDs. They're allowing 25-plus points. It's like you were never going to win those games anyway. And specifically to the Seahawks game, I mean, the Packers had that one, sealed, and they just can't get an onside kick recovery. I agree. I don't think Rodgers has played elite ball every time in the title game, but I think to call him a playoff choker or a guy who underperforms in the playoffs, I think that reputation is completely unwarranted.
I do agree. But here's the other issue that I'll point out with what you're saying. That presumes to me that we're looking at peak Aaron Rodgers here, that you can just say, oh yeah, this is the guy who has performed at this level historically, which I just don't think is true. I think that we have seen regression from him since his back-to-back seasons. Do I think he'll be better than last year in a situation where he wasn't happy, where his weapons were unproven? Absolutely, I think he'll be better. But I am not confident that he's just going to go out there and outduel Josh Allen, especially with a line that I think we should have some concerns about, with a group of weapons that is definitely an upgrade. And I do think Garrett Wilson is great, but I don't know how efficient the run game is going to be. I don't think he's capable of creating out of structure nearly at the level that he was a few years ago. So I would take the Bills in your theoretical matchup. I don't have either of these teams in my AFC Championship game, so I don't really have any horse in this race, so to speak. But I think these two teams have the same fundamental issue, which would be offensive line play. That's the biggest concern. I just think Josh is so uniquely equipped as a one-man offense to overcome that with his ability to make incredible plays out of structure, to carry the run game in situations. And I think these are both elite defenses. So give me the offense that I think is more dynamic and the quarterback who I have more faith in. And to me, at this point, that is Josh Allen. I just don't think A-Rod is quite at that level anymore. I have the Chiefs beating the Ravens in my game. And again, this comes down to just significantly more faith in Patrick Mahomes in this offense to translate to a playoff situation. And I do think, although I believe Lamar is the best passing version of himself, and that because the Ravens are so overwhelmingly talented when healthy that I can see them getting past a team like the Bengals, the Chiefs are just sort of a different beast. And I think you got to put up 35 points to feel comfortable about beating the Chiefs in a playoff game. Maybe look at what the Bills did even. I mean, the Bills played a perfect offensive game and they still lost 42-36. That level of elite quarterback play from the pocket as a thrower, I don't know if Lamar is quite there. So even though I do believe the Chiefs are the less talented team here, give me Patrick Mahomes. And it sucks because I do feel like not only is it boring to run back last year's Super Bowl matchup, which is what my prediction is with Eagles-Chiefs, it's historically very unlikely. We haven't seen that since the Bills and the Cowboys went back-to-back in the early 90s. At the same time, I did feel like there was something of a gap between the Eagles and the Chiefs and the rest of the league. Now, the Niners as an overall talent, again, I do think we're pretty close to the Eagles, but the gap in quarterback play makes up for that to me. And the other team, I understand that the Bengals ended up being the one that advanced, but to me it is the Bills who would have the most potential to make a Super Bowl run because of the upside of the offense and the elite defensive foundation that they've established these last couple years. But I feel like for 3 years straight, as a Bills fan, I have talked myself into, okay, well, it can't be the Chiefs again, So I think the Bills are going to get it done. And maybe I'm overreacting to some really tough injury luck from last year with Josh Allen playing with a partially torn up elbow. And again, with the injuries to the defense that prevented them from reaching their absolute ceiling. I don't know. Maybe they do belong right up there in that same tier, but I just haven't seen it in the way that I have seen it from the Chiefs over and over and over again. And as a Bills fan, I don't want to delude myself into picking them to slay the dragon every year when maybe it's just more likely that the dragon defeats the little guy, you know? That's what the Chiefs are. They feel nearly unstoppable. Let's take a quick break to talk about Factor. With the busy fall season just around the corner, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up fast with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle. This really is a pretty awesome product, guys. I often find that the day just gets away from me between making as much content as I can for you greedy little guys and then got to go to the gym. Time just runs out very fast, and then it's 8:30 at night. So having something that is there, that is ready to go, that is healthy, that minimizes the amount of effort that I have to put into it is really awesome. They have a wide variety of selections for you. They use sustainable practices, so you're supporting a good company. So definitely go ahead, check out Factor. And if you head to factormeals.com/nerd50 and use code nerd50, you get 50% off. That's code nerd50 at factormeals.com/nerd50 to get 50% off. Super Bowl time, Logan. Who do you have winning it all this year?
Maybe I have been drinking that Hard Knocks Kool-Aid, Carson. Maybe my Kool-Aid's a little light green. Maybe I dipped a little ayahuasca in my Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
I'm rocking with Aaron Rodgers, man. I think this is why they brought him in, Carson. I think this is why the Jets brought in Aaron Rodgers. He's a hired gun. He's here to get a job done. For the first time since Super Bowl III, I think the New York Jets are going to be world champions, Super Bowl champions. I think they've got a stacked defense. I think they've got one of the best pass rushes on the planet. I think there's a lot of talent to like around Aaron Rodgers here. I trust Robert Saleh to make this one of the best units on the planet, and I do think it's going to take Aaron Rodgers turning back the clock, Carson. I think you highlighted the big key thing about the Jets making a deep playoff run this year. You've got elite quarterback talents, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow in the AFC, and with those elite quarterbacks come elite offenses that they lead out. So it's going to take, I think, Aaron Rodgers turning back the clock and having some classic performances. 3 TDs, 4 TDs, a couple big games in the playoffs. But I think it's doable. Like you said, this is a better situation. There's a lot of talent. I think he's a lot happier. I think they believe in him. The one red flag I have for the Jets is this offensive line, but I think they can improve as the year goes along. You have an elite defense with a really smart quarterback. I'm drinking that Kool-Aid, man. Aaron Rodgers is stirring it up for me. I think he is a man on a mission. I think he has come here to do a job, and I think that job gets done. I think they beat the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. It's weird. I have 2 wild card teams. Both of these guys are my 5 seed. But I have the Jets coming out on top. They are going to be Super Bowl champions this year, Carson. I already got the script, so it's cool. They just sent it over to me today. So Aaron Rodgers at age 40 is going to be Super Bowl MVP. It's wild this year, man. It's crazy.
I am, in a word, gobsmacked, flabbergasted. I'm glad that your darkness retreat was such a success and you came out and you found yourself, but wow, man. Let me just ask you this, and I'm going to answer it a bit myself. Where are the Jets better than the Eagles? Because I do not think at this stage they are better at quarterback with the level of athletic ceiling and great decision-making we have seen from Jalen Hurts over and over again and in big situations. I think the overall skill position talent is pretty clearly better from the Eagles. As much as you may believe in Garrett Wilson, the incredible duo of receivers, I love what they've done with their running back room, bringing in Rashad Penny and DeAndre Swift. Then there is a massive, massive gap in the offensive line. Like, best in the league versus very likely below average. So I think clearly the Eagles, to me, have the better formula to be a dominant offense. And then defensively, the Eagles have a historically great pass rush and a pretty elite secondary. Maybe some concerns about the safeties, but I think that combination of corner play and historically great pass rush, 70 sacks last year. Now they bring Jalen Carter into this defense to replace Javon Hargrave. They bring in Nolan Smith. They just keep adding talent to the best defensive front in the league. I mean, the linebackers, like, I just think the overall defenses are certainly on par, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably take the Jets front seven, and then I think the
really
just because of the lot. Well, I mean, with the linebackers included, I don't just mean the front four. I mean, the Eagles' front four is terrifying, but I'd still probably take the Jets just because I think we have some question marks there. I'm not saying Cunningham and I'm not saying that those guys can't step in and play great. I'm just saying that I trust the Jets, I guess, a little more. I think it's a bit of a wash there. I think you're right. The Eagles are probably better offensively. Look, man, I said if I was picking with the logical side of my brain, I'd take the Kansas City Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. This is the ayahuasca side of my brain, okay?
Yeah.
Like this is the darkness retreat part of my brain, bro. Yeah, look, man, if I was picking on my brain, I'd pick the Chiefs every single game, every single year. But this is Aaron Rodgers we're talking about, dude. I think it's possible. And like I said, I think there's going to be things that need to swing the Jets' way. This is not going to be easy. I don't think, on paper, I don't think this is the right pick. But I believe in what the Jets are doing, and I believe in the talent here. It's going to take 4 great games of Rodgers. I think that's the biggest variable that you should be concerned with, right, Carson? Like, you can point to any group on the Jets. I think if you're going to point a red flag out, it's the offensive line play, or it's banking on Rodgers to have 4 great games against great offenses. What do you believe in? What is your biggest issue with the Jets this year, in your opinion? Is it the line, or is it banking on Rodgers going out there and having a great playoff run?
I would say it's more the line, and I'm confident in Aaron Rodgers being a top 10 quarterback. I just don't think he has the level of creation to reach that top 5 level at this point. And even though he won back-to-back MVPs when he certainly wasn't the same athletically, I think his arm has regressed a little bit. And I do think his decision-making was not that of peak Aaron Rodgers this past year, which maybe is a bit of an outlier thing, but he was more mistake-prone. I really like the Jets. I think they're really good. But I do think there is a tier of the most talented teams in football that they don't quite climb into.
Okay, so Carson, why are the Chiefs going to win another Super Bowl? Is that your pick, or are you taking the Eagles this year?
That's not my pick. And also, I would just like to say I can't walk the streets of New York at all because of my take about Melo being the most overrated NBA player ever. You're going to go there, and you're going to be a hero, man.
Jets, Jets, dude.
Yeah. You're drinking the green Kool-Aid, man. I am drinking a green Kool-Aid of a different variety, though. I actually have the Eagles winning this year. And push come to shove, when we are in Super Bowl week, if this were the rematch, could I do this? I don't know, because the Eagles were clearly the more talented team on paper last year, and yet I still picked Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs to win, and that's what ended up happening. But I do think this is an exceptionally dominant all-around roster. I'm not worried about the defense taking a step back because I think Jalen Carter is just going to be that good off the bat. I think that this is going to be a historically great pass rush again. And I think if you look at how last year's game went, to me, it is more reasonable that Philly's pass rush could get home a little bit more, that they could run the ball more effectively. And at the end of the day, they were the team that turned the ball over one time in that game, which basically ended up being the difference because it was such an exceptional offensive football game by both sides. So because I feel that Philly is every bit as good as last year, and I do think that Kansas City could take a slight step back with the loss of Thornhill in the secondary, with the loss of Juju, and I mean, I think that Mahomes can turn any group of weapons into an elite passing attack, but maybe there is some threshold at which it has even the slightest bit of an effect on his performance. And if it's not this year, then it's going to be never, because I don't know. I like Tony as a guy in space. Obviously, Kelsey can operate as a really great number one. But I do think having a dude like Juju who can get open out of the slot over the middle of the field, like in those, third and medium situations, just a good route runner. I don't think that they have a guy who is proven in that way in that receiving core this year. And so just those slight changes on the margins when these teams were so close last year, I'm going to lean Philly. But I do think that they have separated themselves a bit from the rest of the league at this point. But no doubt there's other teams with the upside, the Niners, the Bills, the Ravens, the Bengals. There's some really talented teams out there. But I think Philly is just the best team in football, and I think that they get out there and they do it this year.
And you're saying besides Kelsey, correct? On that third down
option? Of course,
option?
Besides Kelsey. I'm talking about a wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is a uniquely lacking in an established number two core. And maybe somebody steps up and proves themselves in that role, but we haven't seen it yet, obviously. Okay, so there you have it. JETS, Jets, all the way to the Super Bowl for Logan. I have the Eagles. We're on the opposite sides of the spectrum there. I think mine are a bit more boring. You are definitely going bold, which I love. All right, let's quickly run through our rewards picks here, Logan. Who's your MVP pick for this year?
MVP, I'm taking Patrick Mahomes. I figure it's going to go to one of my top seeds. One seed in my AFC is the Chiefs at 13-4. And I mean, just on average, this is probably one of the safer bets that you could make if you're a gambling man. On average, Mahomes since 2018, 4,800 passing yards, 38 TDs, 10 picks. It's dude, Mahomes is averaging some of the greatest passing seasons of all time, right? These are great outlier seasons for some guys. The Kurt Warners of the world, the Dante Culpeppers, the Rich Gannons, right? They can have this one meteoric year. Mahomes just does this in his sleep. So, I think the Chiefs are going to be great. I think Mahomes is going to do something similar to those numbers I just read out, and I think it's a safe bet. The other guys, I think, in the running, Lawrence, I think, is going to have a breakout year. I think he's going to be over 30 TDs, 4,000 yards. Josh Allen is a perennial MVP candidate. Burrow, if he can stay healthy, is going to be up there again. All of those guys I have winning 12 games. So I think they're going to be in the running, but give me Pat, man. Pat's, I feel like, about as a safe bet as you can take.
Pat is a very safe bet. Here's my thought, though. Now that he's gotten his second, there's going to be someone out there with exceptional enough numbers, and maybe if Pat does take a slight step back because of the weapons regression, if it's Hurts, I think it's more likely that it's Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, or Trevor Lawrence. One of those dudes is going to put up insane numbers on a 12-13 win team, and the voters are probably just going to look and say, well, we can't give it to Pat every year and go to somebody else. Odds on, Pat is the deserved favorite. I'm going to give it to Trevor Lawrence this year, though, just to be a little bit bolder. He was already 7th in MVP voting this past year. I do think he's going to take another leap with just the natural progression going into year 3. I think he's going to have a massive injection of offensive talent with Calvin Ridley coming in, who I'm very high on. I think the Jags as a team are going to take a leap. I have them winning 12 games. I do think voters appreciate that sort of leap. Again, year in, year out, great production can be normalized and therefore devalued a bit. Like Hurts this year, right? Would he have been the MVP runner-up in a vacuum just looking at how well everybody performed? I don't know. I would have taken Josh Allen and his one-man offensive value over him. But the narrative, the novelty of it is a driving factor at times. And I think T-Law is going to be super productive, man. I also think he's still going to rack up some rushing touchdowns, which we saw last year. He got a handful of them. Tank Bigsby may take a few more of those short yardage carries because he's more of a power back, but I still think T-Law gets himself a handful of rushing touchdowns, and I think he takes a leap as a passer with his natural development and the ejection of talent. So I would put him more in that 4,500 yard, 35 passing touchdowns with a very solid impact on the ground for an elite team without making too many mistakes. Last year he did a good job taking care of the football through the air. The fumbles are an issue, but I think that he can progress there just with age and maturity. So give me T-Law. In a vacuum, he's not the most likely, but I definitely like the upside there. Offensive player of the year, who you got, Logan?
I think this is going to be a super competitive race, too. I mean, you just have so many talented guys, man. The Justin Jeffersons of the world, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, perennial, rushing leader candidates. I think it's going to go to a wide out. Diggs, too. I mean, the skill positions in the NFL today are just loaded, man. McCaffrey. I'm going to take Jamar Chase in just 12 games last season, 87 catches, over 1,000 yards, 9 TDs. Him and Burrow have a special, special connection. And like I said, dude, I don't really have a problem with any of these QB's top guys. Like Kelsey, if you took Diggsy here, low-key, maybe a little Calvin Ridley sprinkle. Like, I think he's the best wideout that T-Law's ever played with, if you really think the Jags are going to take that upper level. And it's going to be hard for Chase, too, just because I think that the Bengals have so much other receiving talent with him. Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Irv Smith Jr. now in there. But him and Burrow have a special, special connection, fully healthy. He had 1,400 yards and double-digit TDs. As long as Justin Jefferson or Cooper Kupp, Carson don't have a 1,900-yard campaign again here, I like Jamar's chances. I think he's going to be over 1,500 yards, double-digit TDs, and I think that's going to be good enough to get him this award. So Jamar is who I'm taking for Offensive Player of the Year.
Very interesting. We agree here, which I didn't necessarily expect. And I do think there's a lot of good candidates. I think that Jettis is the most obvious one because he just had a historic season and is still going to have an overwhelming target share. And the dude is just maybe the best receiving talent we've ever seen. He's certainly on a trajectory to be in those conversations. But we haven't had a back-to-back Offensive Player of the Year since Marshall Faulk. I think that there tends to be enough deviation in offensive production over a 17-game sample from these skill position guys that it's just tough to repeat a season of that caliber. And I do think Jamar has the significant edge in terms of touchdown production. So last year he was on pace for almost 1,500 yards and 13 touchdowns. I think he can easily do that again. Of course, he does have a bit more of an issue with sharing competition for targets, but he's a very clear number one and has a very elite quarterback who is going to produce at an elite level. I will shout out some of my other favorite candidates, though, here. I do think Garrett Wilson has that sort of potential. I think he is an incredible talent, one of the more impressive rookie receiving seasons, especially considering quarterback play, that I can think of. And I think we know how much Rodgers loves latching on to a great number one. We saw it with Devontae's target share and his production, just monstrous year in, year out. I just don't think Wilson is quite that proven as a talent yet. And I also don't think that Rodgers is going to have a monstrous season in terms of pure passing production. I mean, last year he threw for under 3,700 yards, and even in his MVP seasons, he's 4,100, 4,300. So there's just not quite as much yardage to go around, but I do think Garrett Wilson is going to get a lot of it. I think McCaffrey's in for a massive season if healthy, but the health is always concerning. And last year he had like 1,900 yards from scrimmage, and he was still just 7th in Offensive Player of the Year. So it does feel like it's going to go to a receiver. Jamar and Jettis obviously are special and really a rare young duo at the receiver position, but I think that this year could be the time that Jamar gets his turn. Okay, Depoy, who you got?
Man, I think I've picked this guy for Defensive Player of the Year like 4 or 5 years running now. We're going to run it back. I have TJ Watt. As a Steelers fan, watching TJ Watt week in, week out, I just think he is the best defensive player in football. I said a bunch of these numbers when we were doing the Steelers season preview last season with Watt. We were 8-2, 17 points per game to 25 points per game without TJ. We forced so many more turnovers with TJ on the field. We had so many more sacks. Like, he single-handedly can transform a defense. And I've said this stat too. When any season where TJ Watt has been fully healthy, or even close to, the Steelers have led the NFL in sacks. Was not fully healthy last year. Obviously, the Eagles lead. I don't think that trend's going to continue. I think the Eagles just have such a good pass rush overall. I think they're probably going to lead again in sacks. But I think the Steelers are going to be close. So if TJ Watt is healthy, if he plays 15-plus games, I think he's going to win Depoy. Like, he is just the biggest defensive difference maker I think in football by one guy. I just think the track record has been proven. So give me TJ Watt.
We agree again. I'm going to take TJ. I just think he's going to have absolutely monstrous production in terms of pass rush and also having the impact getting into the backfield as a run stuffer. He's just dominant, man, and I do think he's the best defensive player alive right now when he is healthy. So give me TJ as well. Okay, how about Offensive Rookie of the Year?
This one's interesting. I'm interested to hear I'm interested in hearing your logic on this too, Carson. Where do you come down on a good quarterback rookie season versus a great skill position rookie who leads to a great offense? Like, where do you lean? Like, if Bijan and the Falcons have a great rushing attack, and AR or Stroud or Young have just good years, like traditionally this has been a QB award, but where do you come down on that?
Well, I think what we've seen in recent memory is that the quarterbacks have had to be pretty damn good to win right out of the gate. Like Herbert had a historic rookie season, setting the rookie touchdown record. Kyler was really damn good when you consider how rare of a dual threat he was. Dak was like the ultimate game manager, crazy efficient, leading an elite team. Those are the only quarterbacks to win in the last decade. So I think we are seeing that guys at other positions are able to just come in and immediately be more elite. So the quarterback edge to me doesn't quite offset that if a guy is legitimately producing like one of the handful of best players at his position, which we saw with Jamar. Garrett Wilson was close to that last year, especially considering situation. Saquon, Kamara, these guys came out of the gate and they were just monsters. So I think you got to be a pretty damn good quarterback to actually justify it. Definitely an above average starter.
And dude, even when Saquon won it too, you mentioned like Baker doesn't win it that year, right?
Yeah.
Baker had one of the most prolific, rookie campaigns of all time. So I'm not going to take a QB. I like Bryce Young a lot. I think he's going to improve as the season goes along. I like Stroud. I think Richardson's raw numbers might be good. I don't think he's going to be a prolific enough passer to be convincing. Like, I think he might be like a viable fantasy quarterback, but not like a real game changer in terms of winning games. So I am not going to take a QB. I'm going to take a skill position guy, and it's not going to be Bijan. I'm actually going to take Jahmyr Gibbs. I think you're going to get a ton of rushing and receiving production out of Jahmyr, and I think it's going to lead to great offense. Like, I think he is a legitimate difference maker. This is an offensive line that has really, really improved over the past few seasons. I think one of the 10 best offensive lines in football, so I think he's got a bunch of great trench guys in front of him, and then with Goff in the checkdown game, I just think he's going to eat. Like, I think he's going to be really, really prolific right out of the gates, and I think this is a really good offensive situation for him to be in. So I considered Bijan, I considered some other guys, but I'm going to take Jahmyr.
I love it. I thought about Jahmyr as well. My concern is the competition in the backfield with David Montgomery. I do think Jahmyr is going to be really productive in the receiving game, no doubt about it, and that could be a separator, but it does feel tough for me to pass on Bijan, even though I think I'm a little bit lower on his pure production this year than some other people because of the competition in that backfield. Like, I think Algier is really good. I think he's still going to demand a good amount of touches. Cordell Patterson, I don't know that he figures into the run game as much this year now that they have such an elite running back duo, but it is the most run-heavy offense in football. I think with a full season of Desmond Ridder, they are going to lean on that at least as heavily as last year, especially now that they have better personnel in the running back room. And I think that Bijan is a pretty exceptional runner of the football, bringing a lot of power, bringing some pretty high-end speed, bringing good agility and vision as a runner. And it's just the easiest position to immediately come into the league and be elite at, especially in this situation with good volume of opportunity because of how run-heavy the offense is. So I would like to go with somebody else. I considered Bryce Young. I considered Stroud because I do think that those guys are both going to bring a level of poise, of accuracy, of good decision-making to where they'll be impressive as rookies. I just don't think they're going to produce at that, like, 27, 28 touchdown, 4,000 yards sort of level. I think that their situations are too subpar, and I don't think they have the sort of exceptional creation ability that you would see from a Herbert, from a Kyler Murray, where those guys can go above and beyond and create special plays even as rookies. So I just think Bijan is going to be the best offensive rookie. So give me him. Okay, defensive rookie of the year.
I'm taking Devin Witherspoon.
Ooh.
I think this is a really good rookie class, especially corners, right? The Giants getting Deonte Banks, the Pats getting Christian Gonzalez, Peasy going to the Steelers, Emmanuel Forbes going to the Commanders. This is a really good defensive rookie class, specifically in the secondary. I just think Witherspoon is one of the most pro-ready guys immediately, and I can see him not only immediately stepping in and making an individual impact, but I think he can collectively really help make Seattle one of the best secondaries in football. That's a big reason into why I buy into Seattle this season. With Woolen, with Diggs, again, I think this could be a top 5 secondary in the NFL this season. And Witherspoon is just so physical. He's got a dog aspect about him where he just plays with this physicality. He's a really good tackler. Witherspoon's just one of the most ready guys, immediately plug in and play. And I know over the past few seasons, this has been a decently heavy defensive back award too. So I think if there's a really good pass rusher in this class, I think if Tyree Wilson is great, I think if there's a rookie who gets 8+ sacks, I think an edge rusher could take it. But in my opinion, I think Witherspoon's the most ready defensive rookie. So I'm going to take him.
We have similar thinking. I'm taking a corner as well, but I'm going to take Christian Gonzalez here. And I do think we've seen a couple of paths to the award. 7 of the last 8 winners have been either a really productive pass rusher or a lockdown corner. The one exception was Shaq Leonard, who was just, absolutely nuts, first team All-Pro good as a rookie. The other trend that we have seen pretty clearly is that it tends to go to guys who are on very good team defenses, so their production stands out. It's been 6 straight Defensive Rookie of the Year winners who played for top 10 defenses. I think that New England is going to excel. I think that it's an elite all-around defense. Against the run, they were great. Situationally, they're going to be great. I think that they have a pretty good pass rush, and I think that Gonzalez is going to stand out as a number 1 corner who they've needed. I think his athleticism is outstanding. I think his versatility is outstanding. And I think he's going to have a great season and can follow the Sauce Gardner model of being a standout number 1 rookie corner on a great team defense. But, Will Anderson could have a monstrous pass rushing season. Again, though, in Houston, first of all, he's going to be demanding a lot of attention, which might hurt his raw production a little bit, and the team defense is not going to be very good. Jalen Carter, I think, is going to be a monster on a great team defense, but I still think he's not going to play 90% of the snaps just because of the depth of that rotation up front on that defensive line, and coming from the interior, his raw numbers won't be quite as flashy, although I do think they'll be pretty damn good for an interior rookie defensive lineman. So I feel good about Christian Gonzalez. Okay, Coach of the Year, Logan. Who do you have?
Give me Mike McCarthy. I think with the narrative that is going to arise with the Dallas Cowboys, I think they're going to be my number 1 seed. With that is going to come a lot of praise on Mike McCarthy. He's calling the plays now on offense. So, a lot of this is narrative-driven. The other guys I have here, Dan Campbell getting the Lions into the playoffs, that could be a big push. Finally the Lions are back in real contention. And then Doug Peterson. I went away from Peterson just because traditionally these come with leaps. One of my roommates, a friend of the show, he actually did a in-depth look at this too. He was telling me traditionally we see 3 to 4 game increases from one year to the next is what gets it. So I'm going to buck the trend with this one, right? Because all of these guys are kind of established from last season. The Jags, the Cowboys, and the Lions all had good seasons. But I think if the Cowboys lock up the number 1 seed, I think that could be enough to drive, with McCarthy now calling offensive plays too, could be enough to get a lot behind him. So I'm going to take Mike McCarthy as my Coach of the Year.
This is always a super tough award to predict, man, in both the NBA and the NFL, because it's just kind of a weird one, and a leap is generally pretty darn important to it. I do think Peterson has a case because although the Jags won 9 games and they took a big leap last year, I think they will take another leap this year into that 12-win range, and I think are going to run away with the division. I think, though, the New York Jets are going to have the more impressive leap, and maybe most of the credit there goes to Aaron Rodgers, but I think there's also going to be an acknowledgement of what Robert Saleh did this past season and how he turned a defense, along with some personnel improvements, but coming in there from being the worst in football to a clear top 5 unit, establishing a culture. I also just think media narratives matter. There's going to be so much attention on this team given Rodgers and given the fact that they are the New York Jets. Like, Dable, I think, did an incredible job with subpar talent last year, getting them to 9-7-1. Does he win that award if he's not in New York? I think that there's at least some advantage given to guys in that sort of market. So that shouldn't necessarily be a component, but I think it very well could be, and it is a tiebreaker for me among a field of guys who I think will make compelling cases. But to me, the leap from, well, absolutely awful 2 years ago to 7 wins to 11 wins, being a pretty elite football team, that's enough, in my opinion, to make Robert Saleh my pick. But, I mean, I could always go with Kyle Shanahan just for churning out elite football teams with Mac quarterback play. And I also think Nick Sirianni, if they win 14 games again, it's tough because that means that they'll be the same as last year. But he made a really compelling case last year. I don't think he would be able to win it because he doesn't have the leap, but sometimes they sort of do the acknowledgement for multiple years of excellence. All right, there you have it, everybody. Our playoff predictions, our award predictions. We are officially ready for football to start this Thursday. Cannot wait, and we will be back with a show later this week, reacting to the Thursday night game and previewing the weekend ahead. So super excited to get into all of that. If you've enjoyed this, you can find more Nerd Sesh content across the Volume YouTube page. Subscribe if you want our full shows with video. You can listen to the show across audio platforms, and you can follow us across social media. Instagram and TikTok at Nerd Sesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. We're trying to be more consistent about posting our video content, trivia content across platforms. So if you follow us on TikTok but not Instagram and Twitter, go ahead and follow us there so you can catch anything that you might have missed on TikTok. We're also posting some trivia stuff to YouTube, our own separate page, just called Nerd Sesh, if you want to check that out. You can join our Discord. That is in our link tree if you want to talk football and basketball with us at any time. And you can buy some Nerd Sesh merch. Logan is wearing a Nerd Sesh shirt there. You can't quite see it, but we got the flag behind us. We've got hats. We've got hoodies. Tons of cool stuff. So please go ahead and check that out. And if you want a custom message from us, you can check us out on Cameo. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Breber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.